So there's three things that you should focus on when it comes to team, and that would be your culture fit, your skill set, and your strengths. If there is something off in one of those three areas, then your team is not usually going to work out or it's going to feel out of alignment. So making sure that you are paying attention to those three areas when it comes to your team.
Welcome to CEO Conversations, the private practice podcast. I'm your host, Brandy Mabra. This is your one-stop shop to learn the business side of your practice on a deeper level. On this show, we empower you to own your CEO status to scale your practice for growth, sustainability, and profit. Listen in as we talk about how to market your practice to gain more visibility, hire, build, and engage your ride or die dream team, create streamlined operations, and make financial decisions as a CEO. It's time to show up as a confident leader to create a practice and life you love. Let's get started.
Hello. Welcome to another episode of CEO Conversations, the private practice podcast. I am Brandy Mabra, and today we are talking all about the three areas to build out for you to have a profitable private practice. Say that 3 times fast. Profitable private practice. Yeah, so I'm super excited. So one of the things that I love, and that, as you know, I can talk about business and leadership all day, every day, but there are key areas that you have to focus on when it comes to your practice. So inside of Private Practice CEO, I'm going to give you a little bit behind the scenes for what we do inside of Private Practice CEO, how I show up inside of Private Practice CEO, and then actually how we help our clients to be able to make more money, have streamlined operations, make sure that they're set up for success when it comes to leading their team, and all of the things that I get to really use from my 2 decades worth of business management and leadership experience, building, growing, and leading multi-million-dollar group practices. So inside of Private Practice CEO, there's 3 areas of focus when we are working with our clients. And so we focus on team, money, and operations. All 3 of those areas are the core of what I call the Private Practice CEO model. Inside of the Private Practice CEO, there's actually 3 things that you should focus on, especially when it comes to the money piece, the financial piece, and the team piece. And that is going to be the self, skills, and strategy. So with self, this is all about the mindset. So how are you feeling about money? How are you feeling about workflows, processes, and systems? So how are you showing up in your practice? That's one of the best questions that you can ask yourself. How are you showing up in your practice? Are you showing up timid? Are you showing up in alignment? Are you showing up coming from a place of an empowered leader? Are you owning your CEO status? Right? So the second area that we really dive into is the skills. During my whole career, regardless if I was managing a team of 30 or a team of 100, that's a different skill set, right? So having 30 people report to you compared to 100 people to report to you with managers and coordinators and leads and, directors, like that's a completely different conversation in a completely different skill set. So that skill set is so important. From a business perspective, also financially, you managing 6 figures compared to you managing millions, in my case, 16 plus million, when it comes to budget, those are completely different skill sets, right? And so those skill set are the skill set that you have today. It should evolve. You should always make sure that you're learning more about business, always making sure that you're learning about leadership, understanding yourself as a leader, understanding just industry when it comes to the business piece. So that way your skill set is the best that it can be. When it comes to strategy, the best question to ask yourself is what is required right now at this point in time to move your practice forward? What's the strategy that you have to implement? Sometimes when we're talking about financial, you need to make sure that you have structure to your finances. You need to make sure that you are understanding your revenue, understanding the profitability, understanding the expenses, how much money's going in, how much money's coming out. You also need to understand from a marketing perspective, like how much visibility are you getting in order to keep dollars coming in the door, right? And so that strategy piece is so important. Sometimes from a team perspective, the strategy is I need to hire somebody. I need to hire a new provider in order to bring more revenue or in order to scale. The strategy might be I need to open up a second location, a third location in order to scale. The strategy might be I need to hire a really great admin person to help take some of the operational, workload from me to get me out of the weeds. Sometimes it's where I need to hire my leader in order to get me so I can lead from a place of actually being a CEO and not have to handle all the in the weeds work that come with having a bigger team. So at every single stage of business growth, when you're thinking about team, money, operations, thinking about, again, what's the mindset that you're showing up? So, from that self perspective, what's the skill set that you need when it comes to those three areas at your different seasons of business growth? And then, what is the strategy that you need to implement in order to make sure that your practice is sustainable, profitable? It feels good to work in, right? So, what I say 100 million times is that you should have a practice that you love, and you want to make sure that you are not being held hostage to your practice, or that you are, working where you're not putting yourself in a place of burnout, overwhelm, exhaustion, and you're resenting the practice. So actually, to be honest, there's 6 pillars of business excellence. So when we're talking about 6 pillars of business excellence, there's the marketing pillar, there's the financial pillar, there's the operations pillar, there's the practice experience pillar, and then there is the leadership pillar or team pillar, and then there's you as the CEO. So those are 6 pillars. Why I mostly focus on 3 of those pillars is because they're all intertwined when we're talking about the full 6. But at the end of the day, when I'm working with like more advanced business owners, the one thing that's always keeping them from definitely having a practice that makes more money, for them to have a practice that is sustainable, for them to not put themselves in a position of doing all of the things, then when we focus on the core of team, the money, and operations, then all of that's going to impact even the other 3 pillars, right? So when we're talking about marketing, marketing is connected to financials. When we're talking about the sustainability of the practice, that's connected to your team, right? So when we're talking about you as the CEO and how you're showing up, all of that is connected with the operations piece. What workflows, processes, and systems do you have in place? If things are chaotic, one of the things that I always say is chaos costs money. So if things are chaotic, if things don't feel good, if things aren't flowing the way that they need to flow from the front to the back, that's going to be tiresome. That's going to be tiresome for you as the owner, but it's also going to be tiresome for the team that you're working with too, right? So if they're kind of running around with chickens with their heads cut off, which I've been there, done that, and have the t-shirt, and then you're running around with a chicken with your head cut off, I mean, just think about it. No wonder you're tired, burned out, and exhausted. So when we're thinking about all of those pillars, they're interconnected when it comes to the money, how much money you're going to make. Team, the sustainability, right? And then the operations, how are things running? So when we're talking specifically, like we'll talk it to team specifically, one of the things is that you always have to have your ride or die dream team. Inside of Private Practice CEO, we focus heavily on your ride or die dream team. There are clients where we will actively, I will lovingly tell you, please fire them. Please write them up. Please just, from an HR standpoint, I'm just, just really, really, really wanting you to have the best team ever. And sometimes our clients will say, I'm not ready to fire them. Maybe I should give them one more last chance. Sure, absolutely. But you deserve to have a team that is there for you, a team that is there to help you build your practice. I've said this 50 million times. This is not a new message by any means, but it's so important. The other thing is that when we're talking about team members, sometimes it can be scary to have your team evolve. Sometimes it can feel like, what would be that next hire? So I always recommend, if you are in a place where your team, you can tell that you're ready for that next level, what would be your next hire? What's going to be the next hire, not even for today, but what's going to be the next hire maybe for this time next year, right? So when we're thinking about a business, you always have 4 quarters. Right now we're in Q3. So Q3 officially started July 1st and it goes through September 30th. And so if there's certain focuses that you have when it comes to the practice, from a team perspective, it's important for you to know. Sometimes you're preparing for your next hire in 1 quarter where you're not even going to make that hire until the following quarter. Some of our clients are actually preparing now for the hires that they're going to make in 2025. Do you know who you're going to hire in 2025? Do you know what your team needs for 2025? If the answer is no, then you need to go back to the drawing board and maybe get some additional clarity. So the reason why we do this is because we don't want to make any kind of hiring mistakes, right? So if you're hiring from a place of desperation, if you're hiring from a place of just give me somebody, just take the load off, then that's a setup for failure. It's a setup for you to be miserable. I've seen it. I've done it. I mean, multiple times I've done it where I'm like, oh, I probably shouldn't have made that hire. Like, oh goodness. Oh, that was a red flag. And now you're just showing me. So at the end of the day, you want to make sure that you're setting yourself up to be the best place where you actually have a team that, again, is your ride or die dream team. Sometimes with the clients that we work with, that's truly what happens. They'll say, "Yes, I hired this person from desperation and now I need to get rid of them." Or what's my favorite is sometimes people hire family members thinking that they're going to work out and they don't necessarily have the skill set that they need. So there's three things that you should focus on when it comes to team, and that would be your culture fit, your skill set, and your strengths. If there is something off in one of those three areas, then your team is not usually going to work out or it's going to feel out of alignment. So making sure that you are paying attention to those three areas when it comes to your team. So when we're thinking about the second pillar that we're going to talk about today, it's operations. I love operations. I think it's like the sexiest side of any business. Most people disagree. They're just like, why? But the reason why I love operations is because there's freedom in operations. The same thing as with your team when you delegate, there's freedom in delegation. When you have a good workflow that makes things streamlined, well oiled, when things just fit together, the practice is just flowing, that's so magical. It's really great when your team actually follows the policy and procedure that you actually wrote or knows where to look for it. For those of you who say, I have a policy and procedure, my team never looks at it, I'm going to blame that on you. Why are they not looking at it? Is it in a place where they can actually make sense of it? There's so many things out with when it comes to operations where people will say, "Oh, just have an SOP," or "Oh, just do a policy and procedure," or "Just do a checklist." And so a lot of those things are great ideas and you need them, but also knowing your team. What does your team need to be set up the best when it comes to that operational piece? But essentially, when we're talking about operations in a practice, it is how the practice flows from what I call from the front to the back. So from the time that that client or patient calls to schedule an appointment, or if they email you or they put themselves on your calendar, however, that process has now been started. And so when we're thinking about operations, it follows that client patient journey throughout the whole time. So from the time that they are checking in, from the time that you're collecting their money or looking at their insurance, all the way through to the time that they're seeing the provider, all the way through the time that they might be checking out, all the way through the time that you're now filing their claim or maybe billing for the service. For a sub note, for one thing for operations, and it's going to dive into a little bit about the money, which we'll jump to here shortly. But there are for the folks who maybe are billing on the back end of the provider when actually you should be billing for the front end. That is an opportunity where a lot of times people leave money on the table, just to throw that in as a sidebar. But essentially, when we're talking about the operations workflow, it's you're following through the whole process. And so when people start to lose money in their operations, it's because there is something that is either a bottleneck in that process, something gets lost in the sauce in that process, something gets messed up in that process. And so it's important for you to understand what is happening at each stage of what you can call it the patient cycle, the revenue cycle. It's literally just following like what happens at each stop. Each main stop is scheduling, checking in, seeing the provider, checking out, billing, and then collection. Like those are the key areas. And so when you think about each one of those areas, how are things going? Are they going well? A lot of times when it comes to billing, most people are leaving money on the table either because they're not billing fast enough or they're not filing all the claims or all the codes that they can file. Sometimes people aren't collecting the amount of money that they need to collect. They aren't collecting it fast enough. They're not collecting it at the right times. Money's a big thing when it comes to operations. From a patient experience perspective, a lot of times people have a hard time maybe getting on the schedule. Maybe once they are on the schedule, they have to wait weeks in order to even see the provider. Maybe once they see the provider, they're coming in and they have to wait to even be pulled back into a room, or maybe it takes a while for them to get a response back if they actually call with a question. Like all of these things are built in for processes and workflows. One of the best things that you can do, I've said this on past podcasts, and people don't necessarily follow it because it's time intensive, is to follow each process, to map out each process when it comes to like from step one. So if step one, patient schedules an appointment, map out that process. What does that scheduling process looks like? If it is where the patient or the client is actually seeing the provider, what does that look like inside of that appointment? Is it actually the most efficient process, the most effective process? If not, something needs to change. And most people don't think about the how of how they're doing things. They always think about what, like, oh, we just need a document. Okay, well, how are you documenting? That's important. Oh, we just need a bill. How are you billing? Oh, we just need to collect money. How are you collecting money? Oh, we just need a schedule. How are you scheduling? So when you actually pay attention to the details, then that's where you're able to streamline things. That's where things get easier. That's where, for our clients specifically inside of private practice CEO, this is where they make more money. This is where things actually stop falling through the cracks. This is where their team is held to a different type of standard and accountability. This is where you can hold people accountable when it comes to evaluations. Like, all of it is so much in operations, which is why it's the sexiest side of any business, because when it goes well, when it's well oiled, when it's set up for success, that is just, it's amazing. It allows for you to take time off. It allows for your team to be more productive. It allows for you to be more productive, which is an amazing feeling. It's an absolutely amazing feeling. Which brings us to our last category, money. I love money. Yay, money, money, money. But when we're talking about money specifically, it always comes down to mindset. A lot of the things that we're talking about is the mindset of how much money you want to make and actually thinking it's possible. Or once you actually hit your revenue goals, what are you doing with your money? When was the last time you actually sat down and looked at your numbers? But your profitability, when we're thinking about your financial picture, is important. Revenue isn't everything. Right. So the amount of money that's coming in. So even for me, I work with multiple seven-figure practice owners. From my experience, it's multi-million. There's so many practices that I've been part of where the money is coming in the door. And part of the reason why they've hired me in order to fix certain situations is because the money's coming in the door. A lot of money's coming in the door, but it doesn't make sense for the amount of money that's being paid out. Maybe there's too many team members. The team members that have been hired more like makeshift type hires instead of strategic and being intentional. So that's impacting like the profitability. The billing isn't always on point. So the documentation, every provider has some type of coding habit. So how they code, how they bill, what they document, what they don't document. And so it's important for you to understand a lot of the habits that are happening for your team members as well. So when we're thinking about the money piece, the financial piece, there's a lot of things that can be impacted. There was a CFO that I worked with that said when it comes down to healthcare, when it comes down to the financial piece, is pretty simple. And it's pretty simple. The amount of people that you see or the amount of visits that you have is going to reflect how much money comes in. And the biggest variable is how much money that are you receiving in those visits. Based on how much money you're receiving in those visits is going to dictate how much money that you might have to pay out, right? And so if you are paying more for a provider or if you're paying more for an admin, then the numbers have to make sense. But it's usually those three areas. Most times people don't know where to look, or they overcomplicate it, or they're nervous to maybe increase the rates, or they're nervous to maybe talk to the insurance company about getting a higher reimbursement. One of my clients right now is actively going through a contract negotiation. So we're walking through that process. But you have to understand your numbers. So I never necessarily talk about people because it's, for everybody's panel, it can be different. I always talk in the number of sessions, appointments, encounters. And the reason why is because depending on a person's care plan, they might be seeing you at different cadences. Maybe some of it is every 6 months. Maybe it's monthly definitely for my therapist. Maybe it's weekly. Maybe it's bi-weekly. Like, all of those cadences can change. But how many visits do you need in a month at a certain price point in order to make the amount of money that you need in order to make sure that the practice is running? So when we're talking about financials, that's what happens. So either you need more visits, you need more money in those visits, and you need to maybe spend less money. Sometimes the answer is you need to spend more money so that way you can actually have the team that you deserve. I see so many times, just even going back to that team piece, where people will underpay their team thinking that they're saving money. So if I pay someone $10 an hour, $14 an hour, but they don't necessarily have the skill set that I need, compared to if I actually hire like a really solid admin person at $20 an hour, that's a different skill set, right? And so you'll save yourself time, you'll save yourself energy, which also falls into that financial piece as well when we're thinking about the money piece. When we're trying to make more money, having the clarity for how much money do we need to bring in just to make sure that the practice is running, and then how much money do we need in order to achieve our lifestyle goals. So if you were trying to give yourself a raise, which I'm really excited because our clients do give themselves a raise. One of our clients actually just tripled her revenue. So, just to throw that out there, but part of it is having the clarity for what do I need in order to pay the bills at home? What do I need to make sure that the lights are on? And then what do I need if I want to buy a new car? What do I need if I want to buy a new house? What do I need if I want to go on, 3 vacations per year, like whatever that looks like. And then you factor all of that in when it comes to your financial piece. The other thing is who's on your money team, who is making sure that they're helping you understand the financials in a deeper way or holding you accountable. One of the things that I love about my CFO is that she holds me accountable. She pushes me, she challenges me. I have to justify a position if I want to hire. What am I thinking about? And so from a CEO perspective, there's always, always, always where you're able to make those financial decisions. That's your right as an owner, but you should have the understanding of why am I going to hire this person? What's going to be on the other side of this hire? How am I going to be able to pay for this person? And then what task are they going to take off of my plate so that way I can go out and make more money? Or what task are they going to take off of maybe my provider's plate so my providers can help me make more money? So really understanding the financial piece from not only just a numbers sense, but also just from a business perspective, just to make sure that you're setting yourself up for success. So one of the things too, just to make sure that we're looking at is like the money routines that you have for your structure. So how often are you sitting down? One of the things I do recommend is for you to sit down weekly to look at your money. Really not even your money, the practice's money, to see what's working, what's not working. Are you hitting your targets on a weekly basis? Some of our clients, before they start working with us, are coming from a place of being reactive. So they're always chasing, like, oh no, I didn't hit my revenue goals, compared to coming from a place of being proactive. So if you're looking on a weekly basis, you can see, oh, we aren't hitting our visit numbers. Or, oh, our leading metric, which would be, for example, how many consultations maybe you have, is dictating how many visits you might end up with. So our consultations are low. So we need more consultations in order to make sure that we're hitting our revenue goals, compared to the whole month of August has passed and now we don't have enough money in the bank in order to make payroll. So definitely when it comes to the money routines, it's important that you understand looking at that money on a weekly basis is important. The other thing is financial reporting. So I'm not going to go through all the financial reporting, but inside of Private Practice CEO, one of the things that we do have is a list of all the financial reports that you need to pull, when to pull it, whether if it's on a weekly basis, a monthly basis, a quarterly basis, a yearly basis, based on the person. So if it's admin, if it's your CPA, if it's your biller or coder, all of these reports are important for you to understand like the full holistic financial picture of your practice, and that takes time, right? And so making sure that you have dedicated time that is blocked on your calendar, that it's scheduled for you to know exactly what's happening with your practice financially. So if you don't have that CEO time or even the money date with yourself, then make sure that you do that today because it's so important. I guarantee you once you do it, you'll make more money. If you are in a place if you're in a place like, man, my team needs some work, or my financial system or my financial picture isn't really mathing, or if you're in a place where my practice feels very, very chaotic, then Private Practice CEO is calling your name. It is calling your name. So you are interested, you can definitely apply to be part of Private Practice CEO. It's an amazing community where it's set up with private practice owners, advanced private practice owners who are like you, who are going after big goals, big dreams, who do not want to be in a place where they are just in the weeds of their practice, and so it's just an amazing community. There's also me there as your guide and making sure that you're set up for success when it comes to the business side. So I teach you how to be a CEO. I'm teaching you from real life experience, from real life business experience. And we only go through the best practices when it comes to business principles, leadership principles. So there's no fluff, in there whatsoever. The other thing is that there's retreats that are involved. So for example, we are going to LA in order to be able to come together as a group. We're going to be talking about team. We're going to be talking about operations. We're going to be talking about financials. We're also going to be doing some really great wellness things, and activities, and making sure that you're putting yourself in a position to leverage your practice and also build more wealth. So it's an amazing experience. It's one of the biggest, I think it's the biggest perk of private practice CEO are the retreats. But if this sounds like if you were in a place where you want to be just poured into from so many different ways, from just the one-on-one coaching and consulting that you get, from the group experience that you get, from the retreats that you get in luxury locations, then make sure that you apply today. So that's it. That's what I got for you guys today. So I will see you next time. And thank you so much for listening. And I'll talk to you guys next week.
Thanks for listening today. I hope you enjoyed the episode and it empowers you as the CEO of your practice. If you enjoyed the podcast, please make sure you subscribe, share the message, and leave a review. If you want more information and support in growing and scaling your practice, click the link in the show notes to take advantage of our free resources or apply to work with me directly. Thanks again, and I'll see you next time.